Behind the sunny deck, parties and romantic storylines of television's most famous cruise ship lay a treasure trove of bizarre secrets. From tragic accidents involving the real ship, to cast members becoming politicians, cocaine scandals that rocked the crew, and Andy Warhol mysteriously boarding for his 15 minutes of fame, the making of this beloved show was far stranger than any fictional passenger's journey. Here are 15 weird facts you didn't know about the Love Boat 1977. Fact 1. The real Pacific Princess met a tragic end. While millions of viewers fondly remember the Pacific Princess as the glamorous setting for romantic adventures and happy endings, the real ship that served as the show's floating star faced a heartbreaking finale that was anything but romantic. The actual vessel used for all those iconic exterior shots of the Love Boat sailing into tropical sunsets was built in 1971 and originally named Sea Venture, before being renamed Pacific Princess when Princess Cruises acquired her in 1975. After the show ended in 1986, the 640-passenger ship continued cruising for various companies. But by 2008, she had become too small and outdated to compete with modern cruise ships that could carry thousands of passengers. The Pacific Princess was retired from service and eventually abandoned in the Italian port of Genoa, where she sat idle for several years, while authorities tried unsuccessfully to auction her off multiple times with no buyers stepping forward. In 2012, the ship was finally sold for approximately $3.3 million to a Turkish shipbreaking company called Chemsan Shipbreaker, but even that sale fell through when the company defaulted on payment. After sitting in Genoa for months longer, the Pacific Princess was eventually towed to Aliaga, Turkey, in August of 2013, to be dismantled for scrap metal by the Izmir Ship Recycling Company. What should have been a routine demolition job turned tragic on August 10, 2013, when workers were using electrical pumps to drain water from the ship's engine room. 2 employees died from inhaling toxic exhaust gases that had accumulated in the flooded compartment, while 9 other workers were hospitalized. The accident highlighted the dangerous conditions often present in shipbreaking operations, turning the final chapter of the beloved Love Boat into a somber reminder of the hazardous reality behind the maritime recycling industry. By late 2014, the dismantling was complete, and the ship that had brought joy to television audiences worldwide was gone forever. Fact 2. Lauren Toos was fired over cocaine addiction. Behind the cheerful smile and perky demeanor of cruise director Julie McCoy lay a dark secret that would eventually cost Lauren Toos her career on one of television's most popular shows. Toos, who had beaten out more than 100 other actresses to land the coveted role when she was just 23 years old, developed a serious cocaine addiction during the show's run that began affecting her work and personal life in devastating ways. The addiction started almost immediately after Toos got the job, when she attended a Hollywood party and her date suggested they use drugs together. As she later admitted in interviews, she said, "What the heck?" and tried cocaine for the first time, describing the experience as giving her incredible euphoria and making her feel stronger and braver. What began as wanting to fit in with the Hollywood crowd quickly spiraled into a full-blown addiction that consumed both her money and her well-being. Toos struggled to balance her demanding work schedule with her marriage and her increasingly destructive drug habit, admitting that she was trying to please everybody while destroying herself in the process. She revealed that all the money she earned from the show didn't go into a bank account, but instead went into my nose, and the addiction cost her not only thousands of dollars, but also her expensive home. Her behavior on set became increasingly erratic, with Toos sleeping at work and behaving poorly during production, which she later acknowledged as her fatal mistake. By 1980, Toos began trying to overcome her addiction with the help of a counselor, gradually reducing her drug use by setting limits like not using at work or on certain nights. Although she eventually stopped using cocaine completely by 1984, The damage to her professional relationships had already been done. Executive producer Douglas Kramer fired Tuez after the 7th season, stating that there had been severe problems with her throughout all 7 years. She was on the show and calling her behavior terribly disrupting. Fact 3. Gopher became a 4-term congressman. In one of the most unusual career transitions in entertainment history, Fred Grandy traded his sailor suit and comedic timing for a business suit and political campaigns, leaving Hollywood behind to serve his home state in the United States Congress. Grandy, who played the lovably goofy purser Burl Gopher Smith for 9 seasons on The Love Boat, shocked the entertainment industry when he announced he was returning to his native Iowa to run for political office immediately after the show ended in 1986. This dramatic career change wasn't completely out of left field for Grandy, who had actually worked in politics before his acting career took off, serving as a speechwriter for Republican Congressman Wiley Main between 1970 and 1971. The Harvard-educated actor had also been roommates at Phillips Exeter Academy with David Eisenhower, grandson of former President Dwight Eisenhower, and later served as best man at David's wedding to Julie Nixon, daughter of President Richard Nixon. When Grandy decided to run for Iowa's 6th congressional district seat in 1986, he faced the unique challenge of being taken seriously as a political candidate while being known primarily for playing a character who wore shorts and knee socks and delivered punchlines on a cruise ship. His opponents tried to use his television background against him, painting him as just a fancy, educated fool actor, but Grandy embraced his Hollywood past rather than running from it, telling reporters that if there were no Gopher, there would be no political campaign. The strategy worked, and Grandy won his first election by defeating his Democratic opponent Clayton Hodgson by just 2 percentage points, earning 51% of the vote. He went on to serve 4 consecutive terms in the House of Representatives from 1987 to 1995, representing what became Iowa's 5th district after redistricting. During his time in Congress, Grandy earned 8 Watchdog of the Treasury Awards for his fiscally responsible voting record and became known for his ability to work across party lines, particularly on agricultural issues where politics often broke down by regional farming interests rather than traditional party lines. Fact 4. Andy Warhol guest starred as himself in perhaps the most unlikely celebrity cameo in television history. Pop art icon Andy Warhol made a memorable appearance on The Love Boat that perfectly captured his eccentric personality and flair for dramatic entrances. Warhol, who had championed the pop art movement and discovered the Velvet Underground, appeared as himself in the early 9th season episode titled Hidden Treasure, Picture from the Past, Ace's Salary, which aired in October of 1985, and also happened to be the show's landmark 200th episode. The artist's appearance on the show wasn't just a random celebrity booking, but actually fit perfectly with Warhol's philosophy of embracing popular culture and finding art in what others might consider low-brow entertainment. Warhol had genuinely become a fan of The Love Boat, loving the show so much that he decided he wanted to experience a Love Boat adventure himself, which led to his decision to appear on the series alongside other notable guest stars, including Andy Griffith, Milton Berle, and Marion Ross. True to his reputation for theatrical behavior and attention to detail, Warhol made his entrance on the show in the most Warhol way possible, arriving with an entourage of models who sprayed Halston perfume before he took each step. Jill Whelan, who played Captain Stubing's daughter Vicky, vividly remembered the dramatic arrival, recalling how Warhol walked in with his models, creating this fragrant cloud around him and describing the whole scene as being all about the drama and making it a huge deal. In the episode's storyline, Warhol's character encounters Marion Ross's character, Emily Stubing, who had once starred in one of his experimental films as one of his famous superstars, but really doesn't want to run into him during her cruise vacation. The episode also featured Warhol offering to paint a portrait for one lucky cruiser, staying true to his artistic persona even within the show's lighthearted framework. The combination of Warhol's star power and the milestone 200th episode status helped elevate this particular installment to number 82 on TV Guide's prestigious list of the 100 greatest television episodes of all time. Fact 5. The show used a laugh track on a ship. In one of the most peculiar production decisions in television history, The Love Boat added artificial laughter to scenes that were supposedly taking place on a moving cruise ship in the middle of the ocean, creating a bizarre disconnect between the show's setting and its sound design. By the 1970s and 80s, laugh tracks had become extremely unpopular in American television, with many shows proudly announcing that they were filmed before live studio audiences to distance themselves from the artificial laughter that viewers had grown tired of hearing. The Love Boat stood out as one of the few hour-long series of its era that still relied on canned laughter, making it particularly strange given the show's unique maritime setting, where the constant motion of the ocean should have made filming in front of a live audience practically impossible anyway. The decision to use a laugh track became even more noticeable because the show was primarily filmed on sound stages in Southern California rather than on actual cruise ships, which meant the producers were adding fake laughter to scenes that were already being filmed in fake ship interiors. What made this choice especially odd was how it highlighted other unrealistic aspects of the show's production, particularly the complete absence of any evidence that the characters were actually on a moving vessel. While viewers could see establishing shots of the Pacific Princess sailing through the water, once the camera moved inside the ship, there were no signs of ocean motion whatsoever. No swaying chandeliers, no lampshades moving back and forth, no characters losing their balance, and no movement in the swimming pool water that would indicate the ship was actually sailing through waves. The laugh track served as an audio reminder that despite the exotic cruise ship setting, viewers were watching a traditional sitcom filmed on a Hollywood soundstage, complete with all the artificial elements that came with that format. When The Love Boat was finally canceled in 1987, it earned the distinction of being the last show of its type to feature a laugh track, marking the end of an era in television production where artificial audience responses were considered necessary for comedy programming, regardless of how well they fit the show's premise or setting. Fact 6. Captain Stubing never actually steered the ship. One of the most glaring inconsistencies in The Love Boat was how Captain Merrill Stubing seemed to spend more time socializing with passengers than actually performing any duties related to running a cruise ship. Throughout the show's 9-season run, Gavin MacLeod's character could be found wandering around the deck, chatting with guests, hosting elaborate dinner parties in the dining room, and getting personally involved in passengers' romantic problems, leaving viewers to wonder who was actually steering the Pacific Princess while he was busy playing matchmaker. In real life, cruise ship captains have enormous responsibilities that keep them occupied with navigation, safety protocols, crew management, and ensuring the vessel operates safely in all weather conditions. But Captain Stubing appeared to treat his position more like that of a cruise director than an actual ship's commander. He was constantly available to counsel troubled passengers, attend every social event on board, and even participate in deck games and entertainment activities, displaying a level of availability that would be impossible for someone actually responsible for commanding a 600-passenger vessel sailing through international waters. This peculiar portrayal became even more noticeable to viewers who had experience with real cruise ships, where the captain typically makes brief appearances at formal events, but otherwise remains focused on the serious business of maritime navigation and safety. Many fans of the show jokingly commented that they had been on numerous cruises themselves and had only seen the actual captain once or twice during their entire voyage, making Captain Stubing's constant presence among passengers seem completely unrealistic. The show's writers seemed to prioritize Stubing's role as a wise father figure and relationship counselor over any realistic depiction of naval command, turning him into more of a floating therapist than a working sea captain. This approach worked perfectly for the show's lighthearted tone and romantic storylines, but it created an amusing disconnect for anyone who stopped to think about the practical aspects of running a cruise ship, where the captain would typically delegate passenger interaction to the cruise director and other hospitality staff while focusing on the technical and safety aspects of maritime travel. Fact 7. Charo recorded her own theme song version. The flamboyant Spanish-American entertainer Charo, known for her energetic personality and signature catchphrase "Coochie Coochie," became so closely associated with the Love Boat that she not only appeared on the show 10 times, but also recorded and commercially released her own version of the iconic theme song. Charo's frequent appearances on the series made her one of the most memorable recurring guest stars, and her vibrant performances perfectly matched the show's upbeat, romantic atmosphere that celebrated love and adventure on the high seas. During one of her many guest appearances on the show, Charo actually performed the Love Boat theme song within the episode itself, bringing her own unique musical style and theatrical flair to the beloved tune that had been originally sung by jazz pop singer Jack Jones. Her version of the song showcased her musical talents beyond her well-known flamenco guitar skills, demonstrating the versatility that had made her a popular variety show performer throughout the 1970s and 80s. Charo's connection to the show went beyond just multiple guest appearances, as she genuinely embraced the Love Boat brand and became part of its extended family of entertainers. Her commercial release of the theme song showed how deeply she had become integrated into the show's cultural impact, taking the step to record and distribute her own interpretation of the music that had become synonymous with romantic cruise adventures and Saturday night television viewing. The entertainer's 10 appearances on the Love Boat made her one of the most frequent guest stars in the show's history, though she was eventually surpassed by Florence Henderson, who appeared 8 times as different characters. Charo's enthusiastic performances and her decision to record the theme song demonstrated how the Love Boat had become more than just a television show for many entertainers. It had become a cultural phenomenon that allowed performers to showcase their talents in a lighthearted, family-friendly format that reached millions of viewers worldwide every week. Fact 8. The Brady Bunch parents had a weird reunion. In one of the most delightful inside jokes in television history, The Love Boat featured a brief but memorable encounter between Robert Reed and Florence Henderson, who had played husband and wife Mike and Carol Brady on The Brady Bunch. But this time, they appeared as completely different characters in separate storylines. The two actors were cast in the same episode, playing unrelated roles, with each following their own distinct plot that had nothing to do with the other, creating a perfect opportunity for the show's writers to acknowledge their famous television marriage in a subtle and humorous way. The magic moment happened when the two characters accidentally bumped into each other at a buffet table during the cruise, and both actors performed a perfect double take as they recognized each other's faces. After that brief moment of recognition, they simply shrugged their shoulders and continued on their separate ways without saying a word, creating a wordless acknowledgement of their shared television history that longtime viewers would immediately understand and appreciate. This clever crossover moment was one of the rare occasions when The Love Boat allowed storylines to intersect, as the show typically kept its multiple plots completely separate from each other throughout each episode. The writers and producers clearly planned this encounter as a special treat for fans who remembered the Brady family, knowing that viewers would get a kick out of seeing the famous television parents meet again under completely different circumstances on a cruise ship. The scene worked perfectly because it didn't break the fourth wall or require any explanation. It was simply a fun moment of recognition that acknowledged the actors' previous work together while staying true to their current characters and storylines. Reed and Henderson's natural chemistry and comedic timing made the brief interaction feel both spontaneous and perfectly planned, giving Brady Bunch fans a nostalgic moment while fitting seamlessly into the Love Boat's lighthearted atmosphere. This type of celebrity crossover moment became part of what made the Love Boat special, as it regularly brought together actors from different shows and eras of television in unexpected ways. Fact 9. Multiple storylines created continuity nightmares. The Love Boat's unique format of featuring 3 separate storylines in each episode, with different writers working on each plot independently, created a production nightmare that regularly resulted in bizarre continuity errors that sharp-eyed viewers couldn't help but notice. Unlike most television shows where a single writing team maintains consistency throughout an episode, The Love Boat essentially produced 3 mini-episodes simultaneously, with separate writers focusing on different groups of guest stars and their romantic adventures, making it nearly impossible to keep track of details like costumes, props, and background elements. The most noticeable problems occurred when characters appeared in completely different outfits within what was supposed to be the same scene or time period, as writers and costume departments working on separate storylines failed to coordinate their choices for background characters or even main cast members who appeared briefly in multiple plots. These wardrobe inconsistencies became so frequent that dedicated fans began watching specifically to spot the errors, turning continuity mistakes into an unintentional game for viewers who enjoyed catching the production team's oversights. Beyond costume problems, the multiple writer system created issues with props, set decoration, and even basic details like weather conditions or time of day, as different writing teams would make assumptions about the ship's environment without checking what other storylines were establishing in the same episode. The lack of coordination sometimes resulted in characters referencing different ports of call, conflicting information about the crew's itinerary, or props appearing and disappearing between scenes that were supposed to take place simultaneously. Despite these production challenges, the show's creators remained committed to the multi-story format because it allowed them to showcase different types of entertainment within a single episode, typically featuring 1 straight comedy storyline, 1 romantic comedy plot, and 1 more dramatic story with serious emotional themes. The writers and producers apparently decided that the creative benefits of this approach outweighed the continuity problems it created, accepting that some viewers would notice the errors, but believing that most audiences were more interested in the guest stars and romantic storylines than in spotting production mistakes. Fact 10. The captain's real name caused confusion. The beloved captain of the Love Boat wasn't always known as Gavin MacLeod, and the story behind his stage name reveals just how much actors were willing to change about themselves to succeed in Hollywood during the 1950s and 60s. Born Alan George C. in Mount Kisco, New York, in 1931, the future Captain Stubing discovered early in his career that his real name was actually working against him when he tried to find representation and acting work in New York City. After serving in the United States Air Force and moving to New York to pursue acting, C found himself struggling to get noticed by agents and casting directors, and he became convinced that his simple, ordinary-sounding name was part of the problem. In his memoir, published in 2013, he wrote about going all over town looking for an agent, but finding that no one was interested in representing him, which led him to realize that he needed to create a more memorable and theatrical identity for himself. The process of choosing his new stage name involved borrowing elements from 2 completely different sources that had made impressions on him during his early career. For his first name, he chose Gavin, after seeing a television drama where a character named Gavin was a physically handicapped victim, feeling that the name had a strong, memorable quality that would stick with people who heard it. His new last name came from a much more personal source, his drama teacher at Ithaca College, Beatrice MacLeod, who had encouraged him to pursue an acting career and had been instrumental in developing his theatrical skills. The name change proved to be exactly what his career needed, as Gavin MacLeod had a much more distinctive and professional sound that helped him stand out in auditions and eventually land roles on television shows and in movies. This transformation from Alan C. to Gavin MacLeod became so complete that most fans never knew about his original name. And the stage name became so deeply associated with his most famous characters that even decades later, people still recognize him primarily as either Murray Slaughter or Captain Stubing, rather than the small-town Iowa boy named Alan, who had originally dreamed of making it in show business. Fact 11. Florence Henderson holds the guest star record. Florence Henderson, America's beloved television mom from The Brady Bunch, earned the distinction of being the Love Boat's most frequent guest star by appearing on the show a remarkable 8 times throughout its run, but what made her record even more impressive was that she played a completely different character in each appearance. Unlike other recurring guest stars who might return as the same character for multiple episodes, Henderson showcased her versatility as an actress by taking on entirely new roles each time she boarded the Pacific Princess, creating a unique variety of characters that demonstrated her range beyond the wholesome Carol Brady persona that had made her famous. Henderson's multiple appearances on The Love Boat represented a smart career move for an actress who was trying to expand her image beyond the Brady family matriarch role that had defined her in the public's mind during the early 1970s. The show's guest star format gave her the opportunity to play different types of characters, from romantic leads to comedic roles, allowing her to show audiences that she could handle a much wider range of parts than just the patient. Understanding mother figure she had portrayed for 5 seasons on The Brady Bunch, the producers and casting directors of The Love Boat clearly appreciated Henderson's professionalism and talent as they continued to invite her back for new episodes with fresh storylines and character types that kept her appearances feeling original rather than repetitive. Her willingness to take on diverse roles also made her an ideal fit for the show's anthology format, where guest stars were expected to create memorable characters within the limited time frame of a single episode's storyline. Henderson's guest star record was eventually challenged by other frequent visitors to the Pacific Princess, including Charo, who appeared 10 times in various roles, but Henderson's 8 appearances remained significant because each one required her to develop a completely new character rather than simply reprising a popular role. This approach demonstrated both her acting skills and her understanding of how to make each Love Boat appearance special for viewers, contributing to the show's success in attracting established television personalities who were willing to step outside their familiar character types. Fact 12. A 12 million Chinese cruise nearly didn't happen. In June of 1983, The Love Boat embarked on one of its most ambitious and expensive productions ever. A 14-day voyage to China, Hong Kong, and Japan that cost a staggering $12 million to produce and nearly fell apart before it even began. Due to international political tensions, the special 3-episode arc was filmed aboard the Pearl of Scandinavia rather than the usual Pacific Princess, and the project required months of careful planning and negotiations with Chinese authorities who were initially reluctant to allow American television crews to film in their country. The entire production almost collapsed after Chinese tennis player Hu Na defected to the United States in 1982, creating significant political tensions between the two countries that made Chinese officials hesitant to cooperate with American media productions. Producer Doug Kramer spent considerable time and effort convincing Chinese authorities that the Love Boat special would present their country in a positive light and wouldn't involve any political content that might cause diplomatic problems between the nations. Once the cruise finally got underway, however, the real problems began among the cast and guest stars themselves, as the confined quarters of the ship and the stress of the elaborate international production created an atmosphere of hostility that Kramer later described as resembling miniature World War III. The conflict centered around cabin assignments, with various celebrities and cast members demanding better accommodations and fighting over who deserved the most luxurious rooms on the ship. The situation became particularly heated when guest star Susan Anton managed to secure a large cabin on the exclusive skydeck level of the ship, which prompted Gavin MacLeod to become so angry that he demanded cruise line officials give him their own skydeck room in response. Guest star Erin Moran reportedly cried until she was given a better room assignment, and other cast members and guests engaged in similar battles over accommodations throughout the voyage. Despite all the behind-the-scenes drama and political complications, the Chinese cruise special episodes eventually aired successfully and became some of the most memorable installments in the Love Boat's entire run, though few viewers realized how close the production had come to complete disaster. Fact 13. Real passengers paid to be extras. One of the most unique aspects of the Love Boat's production was how the show regularly used actual cruise passengers who had paid thousands of dollars for their vacation as unpaid background extras in scenes that required crowds or authentic shipboard atmosphere. While most of the show was filmed on Hollywood sound stages, the production team occasionally shot scenes aboard the real Pacific Princess and Island Princess during actual cruises, which meant that paying customers found themselves becoming part of a television production, whether they had planned to or not. The cruise passengers who participated in the filming didn't receive any payment for their work as extras, but the production team created a daily raffle system that gave participants the chance to win prizes as compensation for their time and cooperation during shooting. At the end of each day when filming took place on the ship, passengers who had appeared in scenes or helped with the production would receive raffle tickets that could win them various prizes, turning their participation into a fun game rather than unpaid labor. This arrangement worked out well for both the production and the passengers, as the cruise-goers got an exciting behind-the-scenes look at how their favorite television show was made, while the producers got authentic background crowds without having to hire professional extras or worry about additional casting costs. The passengers often found that watching the filming process and potentially appearing on television became one of the highlights of their cruise experience, adding an unexpected element of entertainment to their vacation. The cruises that were known to double as filming locations became extremely popular and would always sell out quickly, as fans of the Love Boat were eager to book passage on ships where they might get to see their favorite stars in person and possibly appear on television themselves. According to reports from the time, fans with enough money to afford these special cruises sometimes got to sail alongside celebrity guest stars and witness their interactions firsthand, though this also meant they occasionally saw the less glamorous side of television production, including arguments between stars and complaints about accommodations that didn't always match the show's cheerful on-screen image. Fact 14. The theme song hit the charts. The Love Boat theme song became such a cultural phenomenon that it achieved something extremely rare for a television theme. It became a legitimate hit single on the music charts, proving that the show's influence extended far beyond Saturday night television viewing. Jack Jones, the jazz pop singer who performed the opening theme for the first 8 seasons of the show, released a full-length version of the song as a commercial single in 1979, and it climbed all the way to number 37 on Billboard's Adult Contemporary chart. The theme song's success on the music charts was particularly impressive, given that most television themes, no matter how memorable or catchy, rarely translate into radio hits or commercial music success. The Love Boat theme had all the elements needed for a popular song. She 100. It was written by accomplished songwriters Charles Fox and Paul Williams, who had created hits for major recording artists and had won awards for their previous work, including Paul Williams' Oscar-winning contributions to movie soundtracks and Charles Fox's work on other television shows. Paul Williams, who co-wrote the theme song, later admitted in interviews that he and Fox initially had very low expectations for The Love Boat as a television series, with Williams saying they honestly didn't think the show was going to last 6 weeks because they couldn't imagine who would want to watch a series about a cruise ship. Their lack of confidence in the show's potential made the theme song's chart success even more surprising and gratifying for the songwriting team. The song's commercial success helped establish The Love Boat as more than just a television show. It became a genuine cultural touchstone that people associated with romance, adventure, and escapism. The fact that people were willing to buy the theme song and request it on radio stations demonstrated how deeply the show had connected with audiences who wanted to take a piece of that cruise ship fantasy home with them. Even decades later, the soaring melody and optimistic lyrics remained instantly recognizable to millions of people who had grown up watching the show during its nearly 10-year run on network television. Fact 15. 3 TV movies preceded the series. Before The Love Boat became the beloved weekly series that audiences knew and loved, ABC actually aired 3 completely different pilot movies that featured entirely different casts and crews, as the network experimented with various approaches to find the right formula for bringing cruise ship romance to television. The first pilot movie, simply titled The Love Boat, aired in 1976 and featured Australian actor Ted Hamilton as Captain Thomas Ford, along with a supporting cast that included Dick Van Patten as the ship's doctor and other actors who would not return when the concept was developed further. The original pilot was produced by Douglas S. Kramer before Aaron Spelling became involved with the project, and while ABC initially rejected it as a potential series, the network still decided to air the movie because of its strong ratings potential. The cast of this first attempt was loaded with guest stars, including Don Adams, Tom Bosley, Florence Henderson, Hal Linden, and Karen Valentine, but none of the actors who would eventually become the familiar Love Boat crew appeared in this initial version of the show. The second pilot movie, titled The Love Boat 2, aired in 1977 and began to introduce some of the actors who would eventually become series regulars, including Bernie Kopell, Ted Lang, and Fred Grandy, in early versions of their famous roles. This version featured Quinn Redeker as Captain Madison, replacing the Australian captain from the first pilot, while Diane Stillwell was cast as cruise director Sandy Summers, a role that would eventually evolve into Lauren Tuis's Julie McCoy character. The third and final pilot movie, called The New Love Boat, also aired in 1977 and finally brought together the cast that television audiences would come to know and love, with Gavin MacLeod making his debut as Captain Stubing and Lauren Tuis joining as cruise director Julie McCoy. This final pilot also marked the involvement of executive producer Aaron Spelling, who was riding high at the time with successful series like Starsky and Hutch and Charlie's Angels, and who brought his expertise in creating popular television entertainment to the cruise ship concept that would soon become a Saturday night television institution.